Okay, so I'm Alithea Williams, the Public Policy Manager at the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. And this is...
I'm Margaret Akers. I am the Services Coordinator for SPUC, and we're sitting down at our national conference this year just to chat a little bit about what we've been up to and some of the things that we've been discussing.
Yeah, so the theme of our conference this year is Join the Fight Back. So as many of you will know, it's been a pretty bad year, almost a nadir, I would say, in the pro-life movement, because in 1 week, in June 2025, we had MPs vote for abortion up to birth, if a woman induces it herself, and for assisted suicide. So what we've really been focusing on this weekend is how we can fight back, both in the kind of granular level on these particular pieces of legislation, and more generally, how we really just need to take this opportunity to grow the pro-life movement. I was just talking and I was saying, the other side have shown just how extreme that they are. I think sometimes we sort of half internalise the idea that we're a bit odd and extreme because we don't think you should kill babies or old people, but actually they're the ones saying abortion up to birth. They're the ones saying sometimes literally let's kill old people to get the NHS bill down. So we've really been focusing on that.
And I think the gravity of the situation has really motivated people to get involved, and that's really inspiring to see. And all is not lost. These are not set in stone pieces of legislation yet. So one of the themes of this weekend that's run through all of the talks is one of hope that these things can be fought back and that new and positive change can be made. But what I really found interesting is beyond hope, there's been this theme of defiance, of this real motivated fight back, this real engagement with what's going on, and this refusal to accept a culture of death in Britain. And I've been really inspired by it. It's been great to see how engaged our supporters are and how much we're learning what to do next, which has been fantastic.
Yeah. And certainly for me, it's always so wonderful to get together with our supporters because we're so much a grassroots organisation. On our team, we spend a lot of our time kind of looking at politics and working with politicians, but actually we know it's our people on the ground that make the difference. They're the ones who are writing to their MPs or at the moment writing to Lords. And
one attendee here has written to 100 peers on the issue of assisted suicide, which I find just so inspiring that people are taking that time to engage with the politics of this country in a really concrete and effective way.
And particularly because it's not that easy. I'm quite a kind of political geek and I like to look into all of this stuff, but it is quite complicated. And we spend our time kind of, writing briefings and emails and webinars to explain to people how to do this. But I didn't really know how it would go having a major campaign on writing to Lords, because it's not as simple as writing to MPs, but people have really responded so well. So you mentioned the guy writing to 100 peers. I think we had some people in Scotland who were having template letters at their church and they got 700 letters signed. It's just really incredible. And then when you watch these debates, you can see that it makes a difference because we had quite a lot of peers saying, I want to thank everyone for all the letters they've sent. And then one I was really pleased with said, I really want to thank people for the handwritten letters they've sent because that shows the effort. And that's a point that I really make. They can tell if you just write a template. If you write your own letter with your own thoughts, then they can really tell that. And it's working.
Yeah, and one of the real themes that we've seen over the course of the 3 days of this conference now is about storytelling and narrative, and I think that's been really positive and is such an effective way to counter the narratives and the slogans of the other side, because ultimately we're pushed this idea about autonomy in both assisted suicide and abortion that just doesn't hold up to scrutiny and doesn't hold up to people's real life examples. And I think our storytelling and how we engage with politics through narrative is the most effective way to change hearts and minds on such an important issue, and to raise this idea about choice and whether or not autonomy and choice are as absolute in these issues as I think people want them to be. With assisted suicide, it's quite clear that members of the House of Lords are concerned about the pressures that the elderly and the infirm, those with terminal illnesses, might be facing from healthcare staff, from their families, to hasten their death when that might not be what they want. And I think we can all recognize the pressures that people face, how much people don't want to be a burden, and to to be looking towards a system that tells people that they can end their lives if they are a burden on people is just such a step backward socially for us, and it's something that we really have to fight against at every stage.
Definitely. And I think something that really struck me watching the debates is the kind of divide between people who understand what it's like for ordinary people and those who don't. Unfortunately, it was some of the kind of hereditary peers who were talking in a, they didn't understand, I think, that some people don't have that kind of autonomy. There was one lord being like, oh, do we really think we're going to be a nation of granny killers? That doesn't happen. But I guess these are people who are very used to having their own way. They've always been able to do what they want, and they know how to deal with the healthcare system. They can probably afford for private healthcare if they need it. But most people just can't, and if they're waiting ages and ages for cancer treatment, or if they're, reliant on their family, they're in a not very nice care home, they just don't have the choices there that these, if we were in a completely autonomous world like that, we wouldn't be nearly so worried about it. But it's interesting, the people who can recognise their privilege and those that can't, I think.
And we know that the ideas about choice and autonomy don't hold up in the abortion issue either. I always quote, this is a particular survey that I use all the time. It was a BBC general populations poll of women that found that 15% of women polled had faced pressure or coercion to have an abortion that they did not want. And that wasn't a poll of women who had had abortions. That was a poll of all women.
Yeah.
So 15% of all women polled had felt pressure to have an abortion that they did not want. And we heard from Professor David Albert Jones on Friday night about some of this and the impact that can have on women and on society as a whole. This sense of we're socially making women, we're putting women in a position where they have an impossible choice in front of them. They feel incredibly ambivalent about the decision to have an abortion. And there are people in their lives who are saying, well, this is the only thing you can do, whether that's by overt coercion from a partner, or with threats of leaving, or that kind of pressure, or it's much more subtle, and women are being abandoned to make these choices on their own. Again, we learned that this ideal of autonomy just doesn't exist, and I think we all know that in our day-to-day interactions with each other. We're communal beings, and we need to support each other, and how much more important it is to support each other in choosing to preserve and sustain life where possible.
Yeah. And I guess you know this firsthand from working with university students who we give grants to, and sometimes you're telling me about these awful stories from universities who are just so unsupportive, and it's like, how do we get to that situation?
So I deal with students and give grants through the Alma Mater Fund, which I'm very grateful for, but I'm constantly shocked by university staff who are completely unsympathetic to women facing an unintended pregnancy, who don't know what to do, and they turn to the people who have, at that point in time, authority over them, looking for help and support to be able to do this. And these people just sort of wash their hands of it. And we've moved to a society that just is quite happy to leave people isolated. And I think that that's something that we'll really see in the assisted suicide conversation too, is like people are getting increasingly isolated from each other and being forced to make these horrible life-changing decisions in a vacuum of just themselves, rather than living in a supportive community, which again seeks to preserve good and preserve the good of the other.
Yeah, and this is trying to exclude the family as well, actually. And so there was a peer, Rosa Monckton, and she was talking about her daughter who has Down syndrome, and that makes her quite suggestible. Obviously, she has capacity in many things, but her mother worries that she would just try to please people in authority. And then Rosa Monckton was saying that the campaign group My Death, My Decision have been putting around a leaflet calling for there to be no interference from family members in this issue. And it's like, just what a sad view it is of the family. And, we've had other politicians claiming that there's actually the coercion in the assisted suicide debate is not people being coerced into it. They say it's people being coerced out of it. The idea that persuading somebody not to kill themselves is coercion.
Well, and there's that incredible double standard happening between the emphasis on suicide prevention on one hand and then the promotion of assisted dying on the other, where essentially what people are saying is that, of course it's wrong for people to kill themselves, and we should do everything we can to prevent suicide. So we have all of these measures, but there are some people for whom life is just, their quality of life is just so terrible. I wouldn't want to live that life. Therefore, it's okay for some people to pursue this avenue while we work to preserve the life of these young people, preventing them from hearing suicidal messages on the internet. All of that is so good. And the fact that that same kindness doesn't extend to the terminally ill, the disabled, the elderly, is, I find to be offensive.
Yeah, I mean, in the debate the other day, you even had people saying, basically, I wouldn't want to live like that in a wheelchair. Well, there were people in wheelchairs, right there. Tanny Gray-Thompson, for instance, the Paralympian, he's such a wonderful advocate on this, Lord Shinkwin as well. Again, it's coming from a place of kind of mistaken privilege, I would say. Yeah.
And again, that doesn't mean that focus shouldn't be on making people's quality of life good and alleviating pain, and all of the focus is that the healthcare system should have an end-of-life care. End-of-life care should not look like hastening people's death.
No.
And ultimately, we've had a really good opportunity to address some of these issues together this weekend, and hopefully inspired people to have their say while the bill is still with the Lords.
Yes, and there's so much more to do. We started from this place of we had these awful bills, these awful votes, but actually we're still fighting back on both these issues. We can, it's going really well actually in the Lords. The assisted suicide debate have been really encouraged. And I think there's still a good chance to be disrupting what's happening with decriminalisation in the Lords as well. And of course, generally, we've been just talking about how we just need to really rise up, get people to join the movement, and together build a culture of life.
Yeah, absolutely. We just need to reach that critical mass of people that can have the influence that we need to have. And it's not that many more than we already have. We just need to reach those people who are passively in the middle and engage them on this issue. It's not a lost cause, but we do need you.
Yes.